The text message came at 9:47 p.m. on a Tuesday, exactly 12 days before Thanksgiving. I stared at my phone screen, reading my sister Emma's words for the third time, hoping the letters would somehow rearrange themselves into something less devastating. "Hey sis, so sorry but we're doing Thanksgiving at Mom's this year. Small gathering only, just the core family. You understand, right? Maybe next year." Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you, core family. The words echoed in my head like a slap. I'd been hosting Thanksgiving for the past 8 years, ever since I bought my house in the suburbs. With the dining room that could seat 12 and the kitchen island perfect for buffet-style serving. Every November, I spent weeks planning the menu, decorating the house, and preparing enough food to feed an army. Last year, 23 people had gathered around my table. Siblings, cousins, aunts, uncles, and their various plus ones. My phone buzzed again. Another message from Emma. "Don't be dramatic about this. It's just easier this way." I set the phone face down on my granite countertop, the sound echoing through my empty kitchen. Through the bay window, I could see the Hendersons next door hanging autumn wreaths on their front door. Mrs. Henderson caught my eye and waved enthusiastically. I managed a weak smile and waved back before closing the blinds. The house felt different, suddenly, like it had grown too large around me. I walked through the living room I'd carefully decorated in warm autumn colors, past the dining room with its mahogany table that had cost me 3 months' salary, and up the stairs to my bedroom. Everything was exactly as I'd left it this morning when I rushed out for my marketing job downtown. Neat, organized, perfect, and utterly silent. I pulled out my laptop and opened my email, scrolling through the usual work messages and promotional offers. Then I saw it. A travel company's newsletter featuring Caribbean cruises departing over Thanksgiving week. The subject? Line read, "Escape the ordinary, last-minute holiday deals." The timing felt like the universe mocking me. I almost deleted it, then hesitated. The main image showed a massive cruise ship against a sunset backdrop, passengers laughing on the deck with tropical drinks in their hands. Below it, bold text proclaimed, "Why cook when you can cruise? 7 nights of luxury, starting November 21st. November 21st was the day before Thanksgiving. I calculated quickly. The cruise would end November 28th, well after the holiday drama would be over. My cursor hovered over the delete button, then slowly moved to click the link instead. The website opened to a gallery of pristine white ships and crystal blue waters. Images of elegant dining rooms, Broadway-style shows, and adults-only sections promising peace and relaxation. The prices were steep, but I had savings. I'd been putting money aside for years, originally planning to use it for a down payment, on a bigger house, a house where I could host even larger family dinners. How ironic! Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time. So if you are enjoying it, like this video, it means a lot to us. Now back to the story. I clicked through the available cabins. Ocean view, balcony, interior. The balcony suites looked gorgeous. Private outdoor space where I could watch the waves while drinking coffee in my pajamas. No one expecting me to cook for them. No one taking my hospitality for granted. No one deciding I wasn't core family enough. My phone buzzed. A text from my brother Mark. "Emma told me about Thanksgiving. Probably for the better. Mom's house is smaller anyway." No. Hard feelings, right? No hard feelings. As if 8 years of hosting, cooking, cleaning, and coordinating meant nothing. As if I hadn't spent last Thanksgiving serving my ungrateful family members who complained about everything from the temperature of the turkey to the type of wine I'd selected. As if I hadn't listened to my cousin Sarah go on for 2 hours about her new boyfriend while I washed dishes alone in the kitchen because everyone else had mysteriously disappeared to watch football. I looked back at the cruise website. The ship was called the Caribbean Majesty, and it was departing from Fort Lauderdale. 7 nights visiting St. Thomas, Barbados, Aruba, and Cozumel, all-inclusive dining, entertainment, and activities. A chance to be somewhere else entirely while my family gathered around my mother's cramped table, probably complaining about the lack of space and asking why they couldn't just do it at my house like usual. Before I could second-guess myself, I clicked Book Now on a balcony suite. The cabin looked beautiful in the photos, a king-size bed with crisp white linens, a small sitting area, and French doors opening onto a private balcony overlooking the ocean. The booking process was surprisingly quick. Credit card information, passenger details, emergency contact. For emergency contact, I almost put Emma's name by habit, then stopped. If something happened to me on this cruise, would she even care? I left the field blank and moved on. The confirmation email arrived within minutes. Cabin 8204, Caribbean Majesty, departing November 21st at 4:00 p.m. Port address in Fort Lauderdale, recommended arrival time, dress codes for different venues on the ship. It all felt surreal, like I was reading someone else's itinerary. I closed the laptop and sat in the silence of my perfect house. 8 years of hosting Thanksgiving, and they'd replaced me with a smaller table at my mother's house without a second thought. 8 years of being the responsible one, the organized one, the one who made sure everyone had a place to go and plenty to eat. My phone rang. Mom's number flashed on the screen. I let it go to voicemail, then played the message. Honey, Emma. Mentioned she told you about our change of plans. I hope you understand. It's just going to be immediate family this year. You know how crazy things get when everyone comes, and at my age, I just want something simpler. Maybe you could come. Bye for dessert? Dessert. After 8 years of providing the entire meal, I was being offered dessert as a consolation prize. I deleted the voicemail and opened my laptop again, pulling up the cruise line's website. This time, I clicked on the dining options. Multiple restaurants. Room service available 24/7. Specialty cuisine from around the world. The main dining room photos showed elegant tables with white tablecloths and crystal glasses. Servers in crisp uniforms attending to passengers who looked relaxed and happy. When was the last time someone had served me a meal I didn't have to plan, shop for, or clean up after? I couldn't remember. I spent the next hour exploring every section of the cruise website. The ship had a spa, multiple pools, a fitness center, art galleries, and live entertainment every night. There were cooking classes, wine tastings, and dance lessons. Shore excursions in each port, snorkeling in Aruba, historic tours in Barbados, shopping in St. Thomas. It was everything my Thanksgiving hosting wasn't: relaxing, luxurious, and completely focused on the guests' enjoyment rather than their constant demands. My phone buzzed with a group text from my family chat. Emma. Looking forward to Mom's cozy Thanksgiving. Mark. Should we coordinate who brings what? Mom. Don't worry about it, I've got most things covered. Cousin Sarah. Can't wait. It's been so long since we did it at Mom's. I stared at the messages, waiting for someone to ask where I'd be spending Thanksgiving. The silence stretched on as they continued planning around my absence as if I'd never existed. I turned off my phone and went to bed, but sleep didn't come easily. I lay in the dark, thinking about all the Thanksgivings I'd hosted. The year I cooked for 30 people because everyone brought unexpected guests. The year my brother's kids got food poisoning from something they'd eaten elsewhere, but blamed it on my cooking. The year I spent 6 hours in the kitchen while everyone else watched the game, then had to listen to complaints about the cranberry sauce being too tart, and yet every year, I'd done it again. Because family was supposed to be important. Because traditions mattered. Because I'd somehow convinced myself that being the host made me essential, valuable, loved. The next morning, I woke up with a strange sense of lightness. I made coffee and sat at my kitchen island, laptop open to the cruise confirmation. In less than 2 weeks, I'd be on a ship in the Caribbean while my family discovered just how much work went into the Thanksgiving meals they'd taken for granted. I started a mental list of everything I needed to do. request time off work. I had plenty of vacation days saved up. Find someone to watch my house and collect mail. Shop for cruise-appropriate clothing. Get to Fort Lauderdale, which meant either driving down or flying. The logistics felt manageable, almost exciting. For 8 years, my pre-Thanksgiving weeks had been consumed with grocery shopping, menu planning, house cleaning, and coordination. This year, I'd be planning something just for me. I called my neighbor, Mrs. Henderson, who was thrilled to watch my house in exchange for me watching hers when she visited her grandchildren at Christmas. I requested vacation time from work, citing family obligations, which was technically true, since my obligation was now to myself. Then I opened my computer and began researching what to pack for a Caribbean cruise in November. Sundresses, swimwear, elegant evening wear for the formal nights, sandals, sun hats, sunscreen, books to read on the balcony while watching the ocean roll by. My phone stayed silent all day. No follow-up messages from my family, no one asking if I was okay with their decision, no one wondering how I felt about being excluded from the core family Thanksgiving. Their silence confirmed what I was beginning to understand. I'd been more of a service provider than a family member for years. That evening, I drove to the mall and spent 3 hours shopping for cruise clothes, flowing dresses in tropical prints, a new swimsuit that actually fit properly, comfortable sandals for walking around port cities. In the cosmetics section, I got a makeover consultation and bought new makeup in colors that complemented my skin tone, something I hadn't bothered with in years. The sales associate was a young woman with perfectly applied makeup and genuine enthusiasm. "Are you going somewhere special?" she asked while applying a coral lipstick that made my eyes look brighter. "A Caribbean cruise," I said, and it felt strange to say it out loud. 7 nights. How exciting. Is it for a special occasion? I paused, looking at myself in the mirror. The woman looking back seemed more vibrant somehow, like she was already anticipating adventure. "Yes," I said finally. "It's for a very special occasion." Walking back to my car with shopping bags full of new clothes and makeup, I felt a shift in my perspective. For 8 years, I'd measured my worth by how well I could serve others, how perfectly I could host, how much I could sacrifice for family, harmony. But that version of myself had been expendable to them. Maybe it was time to discover who I was when I wasn't trying to please everyone else. The next few days passed in a blur of preparation. I researched each port city, bookmarked restaurants and activities that looked interesting. I bought a new suitcase, travel-sized toiletries, and a selection of books I'd been meaning to read for months. Every purchase felt like an investment, in a version of myself I was just beginning to meet. Friday evening, exactly 1 week before my departure, my doorbell rang. I opened it to find Emma standing on my porch, looking uncomfortable. "Can I come in?" she asked. "We need to talk." I stepped aside and let her into the living room she'd spent 8 Thanksgivings in, always as a guest, never as a host. She looked around at the autumn decorations I'd put up out of habit, even though no one would be coming to see them. "Mom feels terrible," Emma began. "She didn't mean to hurt your feelings?" "What feelings?" I asked, genuinely curious. "No one bothered to ask how I felt about it?" Emma shifted uncomfortably. "You know how Mom gets overwhelmed. And honestly, your house is almost too nice. It makes everyone feel like they have to be on their best behavior. At Mom's place, it's more casual." Too nice. I'd spent years creating a welcoming space for family gatherings, and apparently it had been intimidating rather than inviting. "So you're saying it's better to exclude me entirely?" "It's not exclusion," Emma protested. "It's just different this year. You'll understand when you have kids of your own." The casual cruelty of that comment took my breath away. Emma knew I'd been trying to have children for years, that I'd gone through fertility treatments, that I'd finally accepted that motherhood might not happen for me. And she was using my childlessness as evidence that I couldn't understand family dynamics. I see, I said quietly. Well, fortunately, I won't be available for dessert after all. I'll be on a cruise. Emma's eyes widened. A cruise? When? Thanksgiving. Week. 7 nights in the Caribbean. I leave Wednesday. But what if we need you? What if something goes wrong with Mom's dinner? The audacity was breathtaking. I wasn't good enough to be included in the meal, but I should be available, as backup in case their plan failed. I'm sure you'll figure it out, I said, moving toward the front door. You're all adults. This is ridiculous, Emma said, following me. You're being dramatic. It's just 1 year. Exactly, I agreed, opening the door. It's just 1 year. 1 year where I do something for myself instead of cooking for people who take me for granted. After Emma left, I sat in my living room surrounded by autumn decorations that no one would see. But instead of feeling sad, I felt liberated. For the first time in years, I was making a choice based on what I wanted rather than what others expected from me. My phone buzzed with a text from Emma. Mom wants you to call her. I turned off my phone instead. I had packing to finish, a flight to book, and a new version of myself to meet on the high seas. For 8 years, I'd been the woman who hosted Thanksgiving. Next week, I'd discover who I was when I stopped trying to earn love through service and started simply being myself. The Caribbean was waiting, and for the first time in longer than I could remember, so was I. The alarm went off at 5:30 a.m. on Wednesday morning, November 21st. For a split second, I forgot why I was waking up so early, then remembered. Today was departure day. While my family would be preparing side dishes and setting tables, I'd be boarding a ship bound for paradise. I'd barely slept, but it wasn't anxiety keeping me awake. It was anticipation, pure electric excitement that I hadn't felt in years. I made coffee and toast, then sat at my kitchen island one last time, watching the sunrise through my bay window. Mrs. Henderson's kitchen light was already on. She was an early riser like me, probably starting her own Thanksgiving preparations. My suitcase sat by the front door, packed with cruise dresses and swimsuits that still had tags on them. Next to it was my carry-on bag with my passport, cruise documents, and a book I'd been meaning to read for months. Everything I needed to disappear from my ordinary life for a week. My phone had been suspiciously quiet since Emma's visit. No follow-up calls from Mom, no messages from Mark asking if I'd changed my mind. Their silence spoke volumes. They were relieved I wasn't making a fuss about being excluded. They probably assumed I'd spend Thanksgiving alone at home, maybe order Chinese takeout and feel sorry for myself. They had no idea I was about to board a luxury cruise ship. I called an Uber to take me to the airport. My flight to Fort Lauderdale wasn't until noon, but I wanted extra time to savor every moment of this journey. As the car pulled away from my house, I looked back at the autumn decorations in my windows, the perfect landscaping, the home I'd created as a showcase for hosting others. It looked beautiful and empty, like a magazine photo of someone else's life. Going somewhere fun? The Uber driver asked, noticing my obvious excitement. Caribbean cruise, I said, and the words, still, felt magical. 7 nights. Nice. First time cruising? I nodded. First time doing anything like this, actually. You're gonna love it. My wife and I cruise every year for our anniversary. Once you get that sea air in your lungs, you'll be addicted. At the airport, I checked my bag and made it through security, with time to spare. I found a quiet cafe overlooking the runways and ordered a proper breakfast, something I rarely did when rushing through my normal morning routine. Eggs, Benedict with fresh fruit and real coffee, not the instant kind I usually grabbed on my way out the door. While I ate, I people-watched. Families traveling together for the holidays, business travelers with their laptops out, couples holding hands and looking at vacation photos on their phones. Everyone had somewhere to be. Someone waiting for them. For once, the someone waiting was just me. My phone buzzed, a text from Mom. Have a lovely Thanksgiving wherever you are, dear. Wherever I am. As if my location was a mystery, as if she hadn't deliberately excluded me from the family gathering. The casual dismissiveness stung, but less than it would have a week ago. I was learning that their indifference said more about them than it did about me. I didn't respond. Instead, I pulled out my cruise itinerary and studied it again. Today, we'd sail from Fort Lauderdale at 4 p.m. Tomorrow, Thanksgiving Day, would be our first full day at sea. The ship's restaurant would be serving a special Thanksgiving buffet with all the traditional dishes, plus international options I'd never tried. I could eat turkey and stuffing if I wanted the familiarity, or I could try something completely different. The choice would be entirely mine. Friday, we'd dock in St. Thomas, Saturday in Barbados, Sunday in Aruba, Monday in Cozumel. Tuesday would be another sea day, and we'd return to Fort Lauderdale Wednesday morning. 7 days of waking up somewhere new, of making choices based purely on what I wanted to do. The flight to Fort Lauderdale was smooth and quick. I had a window seat and watched the landscape change from autumn browns and grays to tropical greens and blues. By the time we landed, it was 80 degrees and sunny. I changed into a sundress in the airport bathroom, trading my travel clothes for something that matched my new environment and my new mindset. The taxi ride to Port Everglades took 30 minutes through palm-lined streets and waterfront neighborhoods. I saw cruise ships in the distance long before we reached the terminal, massive white structures that looked more like floating cities than boats. My excitement ratcheted up another notch. The cruise terminal was chaos in the best possible way. Hundreds of people with suitcases and carry-ons, all wearing the same expression of vacation anticipation. Families with teenagers, couples holding hands, groups of friends already laughing and taking selfies, and scattered throughout, solo travelers. Like me, some reading books, others people watching with quiet confidence. Check-in was surprisingly efficient. I presented my documents to a cheerful woman who handed me a key card and a lanyard with my cabin number. "Welcome aboard the Caribbean Majesty," she said with genuine warmth. "First cruise?" "Yes, and I'm traveling alone." "Perfect. Solo cruising is amazing. You can do whatever you want, whenever you want. Make sure to check out the Solo Traveler Meetup tonight in the Starlight Lounge. 7 o'clock. Solo Traveler Meetup. I hadn't even considered that there might be other people like me, choosing adventure over obligation. The possibility of meeting kindred spirits made my pulse quicken. Security screening, photos for the ship ID system, and then I was walking up the gangway toward the ship. The entrance was all gleaming marble and crystal chandeliers, with a soaring atrium that rose through multiple decks. Uniformed crew members welcomed each passenger with warm smiles and tropical drinks. I accepted a fruity concoction with a paper umbrella and took my first sip as an official cruise passenger. It tasted like freedom. A crew member directed me to the elevators and up to Deck 8, where my cabin was located. The hallways were carpeted in rich blues and golds, with artwork depicting ocean scenes and tropical landscapes. Everything felt luxurious and slightly unreal, like I'd stepped into a floating resort. Cabin 8204 was halfway down the corridor. I slid my keycard and heard the click of the lock opening. The door swung open to reveal exactly what I'd seen in the photos, but somehow better. A king-size bed with crisp white linens and decorative pillows, a small sitting area with a love seat and coffee table, and French doors leading to my private balcony. But it was the balcony that took my breath away. I stepped outside and was immediately hit with warm ocean breeze and the sound of water lapping against the ship's hull. The view was endless blue water stretching to the horizon, with other cruise ships in the distance, and the Miami skyline glittering in the afternoon sun. I stood there for several minutes, letting the reality sink in. This was my view for the next 7 days. No kitchen to clean, no family to please, no obligations except to enjoy myself. I could sit on this balcony every morning with coffee and watch the sun rise over whatever new destination we'd reached overnight. My suitcase had already been delivered and was waiting on the luggage rack. I unpacked quickly, hanging my new cruise dresses in the closet and arranging my toiletries in the bathroom. Everything had a place. Everything was designed for efficiency and comfort. It was like staying in a floating luxury hotel where I was the only guest who mattered. A knock at my door interrupted my unpacking. A cheerful crew member introduced himself as my cabin steward and explained the ship's services: 24-hour room service, daily housekeeping, laundry services. He showed me how to control the air conditioning, the TV system, and the balcony door locks. His English was accented but clear, and his genuine enthusiasm for his job was infectious. "This your first cruise?" he asked while demonstrating the phone system. "Yes, and I'm traveling alone." His face lit up. "Ah, solo traveler. Very brave, very smart. You will have the best time. No compromises, no arguments about what to do. Just pure vacation." After he left, I changed into a swimsuit and cover-up, grabbed a book, and decided to explore the ship. The pool deck was already crowded with passengers getting their first taste of vacation mode. Multiple pools, hot tubs, bars serving tropical drinks, and dozens of lounge chairs arranged in the sun. I found an empty chair near the rail where I could watch the port activity below. The ship was still boarding passengers. I could see the gangway busy with new arrivals, all wearing the same expression of wonder I'd probably had an hour earlier. Families taking photos in front of the ship, couples posing with their tropical drinks, solo travelers like me finding their sea legs and their vacation personalities. I ordered a piña colada from a passing server and opened my book. The combination of warm sun, ocean breeze, and the knowledge that I had absolutely nowhere else to be was intoxicating. For the first time in months, maybe years, I felt completely relaxed. Around 3:30, the ship's horn sounded a series of long blasts. The captain's voice came over the intercom system, welcoming passengers aboard and announcing our imminent departure. I bookmarked my page and walked to the rail to watch us leave port. Slowly, almost imperceptibly at first, the dock began to move away from us. Or we began to move away from the dock. The perspective was disorienting and magical. The skyline of Fort Lauderdale grew smaller as we headed toward open water, and I realized I was grinning like a fool. Other passengers were gathered along the rails, taking photos and videos, but I just watched in silence. This was it. The moment I officially left my old life behind and stepped into something completely new. My family was probably starting their dinner preparations right now, wondering if they had enough chairs, arguing about cooking times and who forgot to bring what. I was watching dolphins play in our wake as we sailed toward the Caribbean. By 5 p.m., we were in open ocean. The water had changed from coastal green to deep blue, and the motion of the ship was more noticeable. Some passengers were already looking a little green around the gills, but I found the gentle rocking soothing. I'd never been seasick in my life, and apparently that wasn't going to change. I went back to my cabin to freshen up and change for dinner. The dress code for tonight was casual elegant, which gave me an excuse to wear one of my new sundresses, a flowing blue number that complemented my eyes and made me feel feminine and confident. The main dining room was elegant in a way that took my breath away. Crystal chandeliers, white tablecloths, fresh flowers on every table, and servers in crisp uniforms attending to every detail. I was seated at a table for 8 with other passengers, a couple from Canada celebrating their anniversary, 2 sisters from Texas on their annual girls' trip, and a retired teacher from Ohio who was also traveling solo. "First cruise?" asked one of the sisters, noticing my wide-eyed wonder at the elaborate menu. "First solo trip of any kind, actually," I admitted. "Oh, honey, you're going to love it," said the retired teacher, whose name was Margaret. "I've been cruising alone for 5 years now, ever since my husband passed. Best decision I ever made. No one to please but yourself." The conversation flowed easily over multiple courses of expertly prepared food. The Canadian couple shared stories from their previous cruises. The sisters debated shore excursion options, and Margaret regaled us with tales from her solo travels around the world. I found myself laughing more than I had in months, sharing stories about my decision to cruise alone during Thanksgiving week. "You ditched your family for this?" one of the sisters asked with admiration. "Good for you. Sometimes you have to choose yourself. Choose yourself." The phrase resonated as I made my way back to my cabin after dinner. I'd spent so many years choosing everyone else, their comfort, their preferences, their needs. This cruise was the first. Time and decades I'd made a choice based purely on what I wanted. I changed into comfortable clothes and stepped onto my balcony with a cup of tea from room service. The sun was setting over the ocean, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink I'd never seen from my suburban home. The ship was moving steadily through calm seas, and I could hear laughter and music from other parts of the vessel. My phone had been silent all day. No messages asking how my flight went, no calls checking if I'd arrived safely. The silence that had once hurt now felt liberating. I was completely free to be whoever I wanted to be for the next 6 days. Tomorrow was Thanksgiving, but instead of waking up at 5 a.m. to start cooking, I'd wake up to room service coffee and an ocean view. Instead of spending the day in a hot kitchen, I'd be lounging by the pool or exploring the ship. Instead of cleaning up after everyone else's meal, I'd be attending the evening show in the theater. For the first time in 8 years, Thanksgiving would actually be about giving thanks, and I was most grateful for the courage to choose myself. As darkness fell over the Caribbean, I could see lights from other ships in the distance, each one carrying hundreds of people toward their own adventures. I raised my teacup in a silent toast to the version of myself I was leaving behind, and to the woman I was about to become. The ocean stretched endlessly in all directions, full of possibilities I'd never imagined when I was too busy serving everyone else to dream of serving myself. I woke up naturally at 7 a.m. on Thanksgiving morning. No alarm needed. For a moment, I lay in the king-size bed, listening to the gentle sound of waves against the ship's hull and trying to remember the last time I'd slept so peacefully. Then it hit me. This was the first Thanksgiving in 8 years that I hadn't woken up in a panic about turkey cooking times and table settings. I slipped on a robe and stepped onto my balcony with the coffee I'd ordered from room service the night before. The Caribbean stretched endlessly in all directions, painted in shades of turquoise and sapphire that seemed almost too beautiful to be real. We were somewhere between Florida and the Virgin Islands, completely surrounded by ocean, completely free from everything I'd left behind. My phone showed 17 missed messages from the family group chat. I scrolled through them with detached curiosity. Emma: "Mom's turkey is taking forever to cook. What temperature did you usually set the oven?" Mark: "Does anyone know how to make gravy? Sarah tried, but it's lumpy." Mom: "I can't find my good serving spoons." Emma: "Did you bring any?" Sarah: "The stuffing is too dry. How much broth did you usually add?" Emma: "Why didn't anyone think to write down her recipes?" Mark: "This would be so much easier at her house. She had everything organized." The messages continued throughout their morning, a growing chorus of complaints and questions about things I'd always handled seamlessly, things they'd taken for granted. Reading their mounting frustration should have given me satisfaction, but instead, I felt something else entirely: pity. They'd spent years criticizing my hosting while being completely dependent on it. I set the phone aside and focused on the horizon. A pod of dolphins was playing in the ship's wake, their sleek bodies arcing through the water with pure joy. When was the last time I'd moved through the world with that kind of freedom? Room service arrived with fresh fruit, pastries, and perfectly brewed coffee served on fine china. I ate breakfast on my balcony while watching the ocean change colors as the sun climbed higher. No rushing, no cooking for others, no one asking when the meal would be ready. Just me, the sea, and the intoxicating realization that I could spend the entire day pleasing no one but myself. The ship's Thanksgiving buffet was legendary, according to Margaret, the solo traveler I'd met at dinner. They do everything, she'd told me. Traditional American dishes, international options, desserts you've never dreamed of. And the best part, someone else does all the cooking and cleaning. I dressed in a flowing sundress and made my way to the main dining room around 11 a.m. The buffet was a marvel of culinary artistry. 3 separate carving stations with turkey, ham, and prime rib, traditional sides like stuffing and cranberry, sauce alongside international dishes I'd never tried. The dessert section looked like something from a 5-star hotel, with pumpkin pie, pecan pie, and exotic tropical treats. I took small portions of everything that looked interesting, creating a plate that was part traditional Thanksgiving, part adventure. Then I found a table by the windows overlooking the ocean and ate slowly, savoring each bite without anyone asking me to pass dishes or refill their drinks. Halfway through my meal, Margaret appeared with her own adventurous plate. "Mind if I join you?" she asked. "Solo dining is wonderful, but sometimes it's nice to have company." "Please," I said, gesturing to the empty chair across from me. "How are you finding the buffet?" "Magnificent," she said, cutting into what looked like Caribbean spiced turkey. "I've been on dozens of cruises, and this might be the best Thanksgiving spread I've seen. How about you? Any regrets about missing the family gathering?" I thought about the frantic messages on my phone. My family's struggling with tasks I'd made look effortless for years. "None whatsoever," I said honestly. "For the first time in years, I'm actually enjoying Thanksgiving." Margaret smiled knowingly. Family can be complicated. I spent 40 years hosting holidays for my late husband's relatives, who never appreciated the effort. After he died, I decided life was too short to serve people who saw me as hired help rather than family. "That's exactly it," I said, feeling understood in a way I hadn't expected. I was never a family member at those dinners. I was the catering service. And now? I looked around the elegant dining room, at passengers from around the world enjoying expertly prepared food while being served by professional staff who actually seemed happy to be there. Now I'm a guest at my own Thanksgiving. After lunch, I explored more of the ship. The art gallery featured rotating exhibitions from local artists at each port. The library was a quiet sanctuary with floor-to-ceiling windows and comfortable reading chairs. The spa offered everything from massages to meditation classes. The fitness center had ocean views that made treadmill sessions feel like moving meditation. I signed up for a cooking demonstration in the afternoon, ironic perhaps, but I was curious to learn techniques without the pressure of feeding ungrateful relatives. The chef was demonstrating Caribbean fusion cuisine, and I found myself taking notes not because I had to cook for anyone, but because the flavors intrigued me. "First time cooking for pleasure instead of obligation?" asked the woman next to me, noticing my enthusiasm. "Is it that obvious?" I laughed. I recognized the look. I spent 20 years cooking for a husband who criticized everything. After my divorce, I discovered I actually love cooking when it's for people who appreciate it. The theme of the day seemed to be meeting women who'd reclaimed their lives from unappreciative families. At the afternoon cocktail hour, I met Susan, a recently divorced teacher who was taking her first solo vacation in 15 years. At the evening show, I sat next to Carol, whose adult children had been too busy to include her in their holiday plans, so she'd booked a cruise instead of sitting home alone. "The funny thing," Carol told me during intermission, "is that I'm having a better time than I would have had sitting in their cramped apartment watching their kids throw tantrums while they argued about politics." Each conversation reinforced what I was learning about myself. I wasn't the only woman who'd been taken for granted by family, and I wasn't the only one discovering the joy of putting herself first. My phone buzzed throughout the day with updates from home. Photos of their chaotic kitchen, complaints about the crowded table, arguments about who was responsible for various disasters. Emma sent a passive-aggressive message. Hope you're having fun while we're dealing with Mom's cooking crisis. I was having fun. More fun than I'd had in years. That evening, I attended the solo travelers meetup Margaret had mentioned. About 30 people gathered in the Starlight Lounge. Men and women of various ages who'd all chosen adventure over convention. Some were divorced, some widowed. Some simply tired of compromising their dreams for other people's comfort zones. First, "Solo cruise?" asked David, a recently retired engineer from Seattle whose grown children lived across the country. "First solo anything, really," I admitted. "I spent so many years organizing my life around other people's needs that I forgot I had my own." "That's the beautiful thing about solo travel," said Patricia, a woman about my age who'd been cruising alone for 3 years. "You remember who you are when you're not trying to be what everyone else needs you to be." The group shared stories, recommendations for shore excursions, and plans for the upcoming port days. I found myself looking forward to exploring St. Thomas with some of these new friends, people who'd chosen to invest in their own happiness rather than waiting for others to make them a priority. Back in my cabin that night, I stood on my balcony watching the stars reflect on the dark ocean. The ship was moving steadily through calm seas toward tomorrow's adventure. In my old life, I'd be cleaning up after Thanksgiving dinner right now, loading the dishwasher for the 3rd time, wiping down counters while everyone else watched football, or retreated to their phones. Instead, I was planning which beaches to visit in St. Thomas, which local restaurants to try, which souvenirs might remind me of this transformative week. I was thinking about the cooking class I'd signed up for in Barbados, the snorkeling excursion in Aruba, the Mayan ruins tour in Cozumel. My phone showed one final message from Emma. "Next year, we're definitely doing it at your house again. This was a disaster." I typed back, "We'll see," then deleted it without sending. They assumed I'd be available whenever they decided they needed me again, that I'd return to my role as the family servant once I'd gotten this little rebellion out of my system. They had no idea I was planning my next solo adventure before this. One was even over. The next 6 days passed in a blur of discovery. In St. Thomas, I shopped for jewelry made by local artisans and ate conch fritters at a beachside cafe recommended by other solo travelers. In Barbados, I learned to cook traditional fish cakes and explored rum distilleries with new friends from the ship. In Aruba, I snorkeled in crystal-clear waters and saw tropical fish in colors I didn't know existed. In Cozumel, I climbed ancient pyramids and felt connected to something larger than my small suburban world. Each port brought new experiences, new confidence, new proof that I was capable of navigating the world on my own terms. I bought souvenirs, for myself instead of everyone else, tried foods I'd never heard of, had conversations with strangers who became temporary friends. On the final sea day, I attended a wine tasting, learned to salsa dance, and spent the afternoon reading on my balcony while watching the ocean roll by. That evening, the ship hosted a farewell dinner for passengers, and I found myself at a table with all the solo travelers I'd met throughout the week. "So what's next?" Margaret asked, as we shared stories from our various adventures. "I'm thinking about a Mediterranean cruise in the spring," I said, surprising myself with the certainty in my voice. "Maybe solo, maybe with some of you." "Look at you, becoming a world traveler," laughed Patricia. "Remember what you said that first night about this being your first solo anything?" I did remember. That woman seemed like a stranger now. Someone who'd been so focused on serving others that she'd forgotten to live her own life. The woman sitting at this table had snorkeled with sea turtles, learned to cook Caribbean cuisine, danced salsa with strangers, and discovered that she was perfectly capable of creating her own adventures. On Wednesday morning, I packed my suitcase with new clothes, local crafts, and memories that would last a lifetime. My phone showed dozens of messages from family, ranging from complaints about their disastrous Thanksgiving to demands about when I'd be available for Christmas planning. I turned off the phone and focused on saying goodbye to the friends I'd made, the crew members who'd made the week special, and the version of myself who'd boarded this ship a week ago. The woman disembarking was confident, independent, and clear about her priorities in a way she'd never been before. The flight home gave me time to process what I'd learned. I'd spent 8 years trying to earn my family's love through service, never realizing that people who truly love you don't require you to earn it through exhausting yourself for their benefit. I'd been so busy being indispensable that I'd made myself invisible as an individual. My house looked exactly the same when I returned, but I saw it differently. Instead of a showcase for hosting others, it was my sanctuary. Instead of a kitchen designed for serving large groups, it was a space where I could experiment with new recipes for my own pleasure. Instead of guest rooms that needed to be kept, ready for visitors who took my hospitality for granted, they could become a home office, an art studio, whatever I wanted them to be. The messages from my family continued, but their tone had shifted. Emma called to apologize for being inconsiderate about Thanksgiving. Mark texted asking if I was free to host Christmas because Mom's place just isn't big enough. Mom left a voicemail saying she missed my touch with holiday meals and hoped I wasn't too upset about being excluded. They still didn't understand what they'd done, but they were beginning to realize they needed me more than I needed them. The power dynamic had shifted, and I was no longer willing to accept crumbs of appreciation in exchange for enormous amounts of effort. I scheduled Christmas at a local restaurant. If they wanted to see me for the holidays, they could meet me somewhere that treated me as a guest rather than unpaid help. Some family members complained about the cost and the impersonal setting, but others were relieved not to have the pressure of hosting or traveling. 6 months later, I was planning my Mediterranean cruise with Patricia and Margaret. A year later, I'd taken 5 solo trips and joined a travel club for independent women. 2 years later, I was leading small group tours for women who wanted to discover their own strength through travel. My family eventually adjusted to the new boundaries. Some relationships improved when they were based on mutual respect rather than my service. Others faded when it became clear they'd valued my labor more than my company. Both outcomes were exactly as they should be. I still host occasional gatherings, but now they're celebrations of relationships I choose to nurture rather than obligatory performances for people who take me for granted. My house is still beautiful, but it's no longer a stage set for other people's comfort at the expense of my own. The best part isn't the exotic destinations or the stamps in my passport, though I treasure both. The best part is waking up each morning knowing that my life belongs to me, that my choices are based on my own dreams rather than other people's expectations, and that I'm finally living as the protagonist of my own story, rather than a supporting character in everyone else's. Sometimes, the greatest adventure isn't finding new places, it's finding yourself. And sometimes the most radical act of love isn't serving others endlessly, but finally learning to serve your own soul with the same devotion you once gave away so freely. My Caribbean cruise taught me that family isn't just about who shares your DNA. It's about who celebrates your joy, supports your dreams, and values your presence as much as your presence. And if your biological family can't do that, you're perfectly capable of creating a chosen family of fellow adventurers who understand that the best relationships are built on mutual respect rather than one-sided sacrifice. The ocean taught me that there's a whole world beyond the small circle of people who took my generosity for granted, and I've been exploring it ever since, one port at a time, one adventure at a time, one courageous choice at a time. After all, the best revenge isn't anger or bitterness. It's living so well that you forget why you were hurt in the first place. And I've been living very, very well indeed. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.